On the farthest edge of the galaxy lies Outpost Eternity, humanity's last bastion against relentless alien invasions. But as newly appointed Commander Elias Drake takes command, he uncovers a chilling truth. The attacks are just a diversion. A far deadlier force is approaching from the depths of space, one that could destroy not just the outpost, but all life as we know it. With limited resources and time running out, Elias must make an impossible choice: fortify defenses against the known enemy or prepare for an unknown horror lurking in the void. Subscribe now to witness this epic tale of survival, sacrifice, and the fight for the future of the galaxy. The first thing Commander Elias Drake noticed upon stepping onto Outpost Eternity was the smell, a faint metallic tang mixed with the acrid scent of burnt circuits. It wasn't unpleasant, exactly, but it carried an air of decay, as though the station itself had seen better days. And indeed, it had. Once a proud monument to human ingenuity, the outpost now stood as a relic of a bygone era, its corridors dimly lit by flickering fluorescent panels and its walls scarred by decades of conflict. Elias had been briefed extensively before his arrival, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of the situation. For over 2 centuries, Outpost Eternity had served as the frontline defense against the nomadic alien races collectively known as the Karvath Horde. These marauders swept through the outer rim of the galaxy like a plague, raiding colonies, scavenging resources, and leaving destruction in their wake. Their motivations were simple: survival, but their methods were brutal, making them a constant thorn in humanity's side. As Elias made his way to the command center, he passed groups of weary soldiers, their faces etched with exhaustion. They saluted him stiffly, their movements mechanical, as if even the act of showing respect required more energy than they could spare. He nodded in return, taking note of their hollow eyes and slumped shoulders. Morale here was low, and who could blame them? Life on the outpost was a never-ending cycle of repairs, drills, and battles, punctuated only by brief moments of respite before the next wave of attackers arrived. When Elias finally reached the command center, he was greeted by Captain Ria Solis, the station's second-in-command. Her sharp features softened slightly as she extended a hand. "Welcome aboard, Commander," she said, her tone professional but tinged with skepticism. "I assume you've read the reports?" "I have," Elias replied, shaking her hand firmly. "But I'd appreciate your perspective." Ria hesitated, glancing around the room at the other officers before lowering her voice. "We're stretched thin, sir. Every skirmish chips away at our defenses, and reinforcements are months away, if they come at all. The Karvath aren't just raiders anymore. They're getting smarter, more organized. Some of us think there's something bigger coming," but she trailed off, shrugging helplessly. "But what?" Elias pressed. "Nothing concrete," Ria admitted. "Just a feeling. Like we're missing something important." Little did either of them know that feeling was about to become terrifyingly real. Elias spent his first few days on the outpost familiarizing himself with its operations. The station was a labyrinth of interconnected modules, each serving a specific purpose: housing, engineering, medical facilities, and, most crucially, the armory and defensive systems. At its core lay the command center, a circular chamber dominated by a massive holographic display showing the surrounding sector of space. It was here that Elias spent most of his time, poring over data logs and analyzing patterns in the Karvath attacks. What struck him immediately was their predictability, or rather, their lack thereof. While previous commanders had attempted to establish patterns based on timing, location, and frequency, none of the models held up under scrutiny. One week, the Karvath would strike en masse, overwhelming the outpost's defenses. The next, they might send only a handful of ships, probing for weaknesses. Sometimes, they wouldn't appear at all, leaving the crew to wonder if they'd finally moved on to greener pastures. Yet despite their apparent randomness, there was a rhythm to it, a subtle cadence that hinted at some underlying strategy. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that the Karvath weren't acting independently, that someone or something was orchestrating their movements. His suspicions deepened when he stumbled upon an anomaly buried deep within the archives. Buried beneath layers of classified files was a series of intercepted transmissions between Karvath vessels. At first glance, they appeared routine: coordinates, timestamps, orders relayed in their guttural language. But when Elias ran them through a decryption algorithm developed by the xenolinguistics team, fragments of a different message began to emerge. "They're talking about something called the Veil," Elias muttered aloud, scrolling through the translated text. "Something beyond the edge of explored space." Ria leaned over his shoulder, frowning. "The Veil? That sounds ominous." "It does," Elias agreed. "And whatever it is, it's big enough to warrant coded messages and evasive maneuvers. I think we're dealing with more than just raiders." The discovery of the Veil sent ripples through the command staff. Some dismissed it as superstition, a myth propagated by the Karvath themselves to intimidate their enemies. Others believed it was a legitimate threat, albeit one shrouded in mystery. Among those leaning toward the latter was Dr. Alaric Voss, the station's chief scientist and resident expert on extraterrestrial phenomena. "When civilizations encounter the unknown, they often personify it," Alaric explained during a briefing. "The Veil could be anything: a natural phenomenon, a weapon, even another species. What matters is how the Karvath are reacting to it. Their behavior suggests fear, which means whatever's out there is significant enough to scare them." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "So, you think they're using us as a distraction?" "It's possible," Alaric replied. "If the Veil represents an existential threat, diverting our attention with raids would buy them time to prepare or flee." The implications were staggering. If the Karvath were indeed masking a larger danger, then Outpost Eternity wasn't just a target, it was a pawn in a much larger game. Elias knew he needed more information, but gathering it wouldn't be easy. The station's long-range sensors were outdated, barely capable of tracking individual ships, let alone scanning the vast expanse of uncharted space beyond the outpost's borders. "We'll need to upgrade the array," Elias decided. "And fast." Upgrading the sensor array proved to be easier said than done. Resources were already stretched thin, and diverting personnel and materials meant weakening other critical systems. Still, Elias insisted, knowing that understanding the nature of the Veil was essential to formulating a coherent strategy. While engineers worked tirelessly to enhance the sensors, Elias turned his attention to the station's defenses. Years of continuous combat had taken their toll, leaving many turrets inoperable and shield generators operating at reduced capacity. Repairs were underway, but progress was slow, hampered by shortages of spare parts and skilled labor. Meanwhile, tensions among the crew continued to rise. Rumors about the Veil spread like wildfire, fueling paranoia and dissent. Some argued that focusing on an unknown threat was reckless, especially when the Karvath remained an immediate and tangible danger. Others believed ignoring the Veil was tantamount to suicide, citing historical precedents where failure to adapt led to catastrophic consequences. Caught in the middle was Elias, whose every decision was scrutinized by both superiors and subordinates alike. He understood the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders, yet he couldn't afford to second-guess himself. Every choice he made, from allocating resources to deploying troops, had the potential to determine the fate of not just the outpost, but countless lives across the galaxy. As the days passed, the upgraded sensor array began picking up strange readings emanating from the direction of the Veil. At first, they were faint, almost imperceptible, but gradually they grew stronger, forming a pattern that defied conventional explanation. Waves of energy pulsed outward in rhythmic bursts, accompanied by gravitational distortions that warped nearby star systems. "These readings don't match any known celestial body," Alaric reported during a debriefing session. "Whatever's causing them isn't natural." "Could it be artificial?" Elias asked, leaning forward intently. "It's possible," Alaric conceded. "If so, we're looking at technology far beyond anything we've encountered before." The revelation sent a chill down Elias's spine. If the Veil was indeed artificial, then its creators were likely responsible for the Karvath's erratic behavior.
But why?
What purpose did these coordinated attacks serve? Were they meant to draw attention away from the Veil, or were they part of some larger plan? Before Elias could delve deeper into these questions, alarms blared throughout the station. A fresh wave of Carvath ships had entered sensor range, heading straight for Outpost Eternity. The decision to broadcast false intelligence about the Veil's accelerated approach was a calculated gamble, one that required precise timing and flawless execution. Elias knew that if the Carvath detected even a hint of deception, they would press their attack with renewed ferocity. To ensure the ruse succeeded, he enlisted the help of Dr. Alaric Voss, whose expertise in xenolinguistics proved invaluable. Together, they crafted a transmission mimicking the Carvatha's encrypted communications, embedding subtle cues designed to trigger their instinctual fear response. As the signal propagated through space, tension aboard the outpost reached a breaking point. Every eye was glued to the holographic display, tracking the movements of the incoming fleet. For several agonizing minutes, it seemed as though the plan had failed. The Carvath continued their advance, undeterred. Then, suddenly, their formation began to break apart. Ships peeled off from the main group, retreating toward the outer edges of the system. Within hours, the majority of the fleet had vanished into the void, leaving only scattered remnants behind. The relief among the crew was palpable, but short-lived. While the immediate threat had diminished, the outpost remained dangerously exposed. The diversion of resources to fortify defenses against the Carvath had left critical systems compromised, including life support and power distribution. Engineers scrambled to restore functionality, working around the clock to stabilize the station. Meanwhile, Elias turned his attention back to the Veil. Though temporarily stalled by the EMP device, the nanobot swarm showed signs of regrouping, its fragmented components slowly reassembling into a cohesive entity. Time was running out, and without a long-term solution, humanity's fate remained uncertain. With the Carvath temporarily neutralized, Elias convened an emergency meeting to address the looming threat of the Veil. Gathered in the command center were key members of his team: Captain Ria Solis, Dr. Alaric Voss, Chief Engineer Marcus Hale, and Lieutenant Commander Priya Patel, Head of Tactical Operations. Each brought unique perspectives to the table, shaping the discussion that followed. "We've bought ourselves some breathing room," Elias began, pacing before the holographic display. "But make no mistake, the Veil is still out there, and it's only a matter of time before it regains strength. We need a plan, and we need it now." Alaric stepped forward, his expression grim. "Based on our analysis, the Veil operates on a hive mind principle, with each nanobot functioning as a node in a vast network. Disrupting that network temporarily scattered them, but it didn't destroy the core consciousness driving them. If we want to stop the Veil permanently, we'll need to target that core." "But how do we find it?" Ria asked, crossing her arms. "It could be anywhere within the swarm or nowhere at all. What if it's distributed across every individual unit?" "That's unlikely," Alaric countered. "Even a decentralized system requires a central processing hub to coordinate complex behaviors. My hypothesis is that the core exists as a concentrated mass somewhere within the swarm, possibly shielded by layers of drones." Marcus chimed in, his voice tinged with skepticism. "Assuming you're right, getting close enough to identify and eliminate that core won't be easy. Our ships aren't equipped for deep space infiltration, and even if they were, we'd be flying blind without better intel." Priya nodded in agreement. "Not to mention the risk of drawing the Carvath back into the fray. If they catch wind of what we're planning, they might see it as an opportunity to finish us off once and for all." Elias listened intently, weighing the pros and cons of each argument. Finally, he spoke. "We don't have the luxury of waiting for perfect conditions. Here's what we'll do. Marcus, I want you to modify one of our reconnaissance probes to act as a deep penetration drone. Equip it with sensors capable of detecting energy signatures consistent with a central processing unit. Alaric, work with Priya to develop a payload that can disable or destroy the core once located. Ria, coordinate defensive preparations in case the Carvath return while we're vulnerable." "Understood." A chorus of affirmatives echoed through the room, though the weight of the task ahead hung heavy in the air. The modified probe, dubbed Aegis 1, represented humanity's best chance at unraveling the mystery of the Veil. Outfitted with cutting-edge sensor arrays and a compact EMP emitter, it was designed to infiltrate the swarm undetected, gathering data while avoiding detection. However, launching it posed significant risks. Any misstep could alert the Veil to the outpost's intentions, triggering an immediate counterattack. To minimize exposure, Elias ordered the probe deployed during a routine maintenance cycle, masking its departure as part of standard operational procedures. As Aegis-1 slipped silently into the void, the team monitored its progress from the command center, holding their breath as it approached the outer edges of the swarm. Initial readings confirmed Alaric's hypothesis. The nanobots operated under a hierarchical structure, with certain units exhibiting higher levels of activity than others. These leaders appeared to direct the movement and behavior of surrounding drones, suggesting the presence of a centralized command module. "Aha!" Alaric exclaimed, pointing to a cluster of anomalies on the display. "There, that's where we'll find the core." Before anyone could celebrate, however, alarms blared throughout the station. A small contingent of Karvath ships had reappeared, heading directly for the probe's location. "They must have intercepted the launch signature," Priya muttered, her fingers flying over the tactical console. "Orders, sir?" Elias hesitated for a fraction of a second before issuing his directive. "Protect the probe at all costs. It's our only shot at stopping the Veil." The ensuing skirmish tested the limits of both the outpost's defenses and the crew's resolve. With most of the fleet still absent, the Karvath force consisted of only a handful of vessels, but each was heavily armed and highly maneuverable. Their objective was clear: destroy Aegis-1 before it could penetrate deeper into the swarm. Lieutenant Commander Priya Patel coordinated the counterattack, deploying interceptor craft to harass the enemy, while turrets focused fire on their lead ship. Despite their numerical disadvantage, the defenders managed to hold their ground, thanks in large part to innovative tactics devised by Rhea Solis. Using decoy signals and feints, she lured the Karvath into predictable patterns, allowing Priya's fighters to exploit weaknesses in their formations. Meanwhile, Aegis-1 pressed onward, its sensors scanning furiously for the Veil's core. Back in the command center, Alaric worked tirelessly to interpret the data streaming in, filtering out noise to isolate potential targets. His efforts paid off when he identified a massive concentration of energy emanating from a dense knot of nanobots near the swarm center. "There," he shouted, marking the location on the holographic display. "That has to be it." Elias wasted no time. "Prepare the payload. Once Aegis-1 reaches optimal range, detonate." As the order was relayed, the battle intensified. The Karvath redoubled their efforts, launching wave after wave of assault drones in a desperate bid to intercept the probe. Casualties mounted on both sides, but the defenders refused to yield, driven by the knowledge that failure meant annihilation. At last, Aegis-1 reached its target. The payload, a concentrated burst of electromagnetic radiation, detonated with devastating effect, obliterating the core and sending shockwaves rippling through the swarm. For a moment, it seemed as though victory was assured. The nanobots faltered, their coordinated movements giving way to chaotic disarray. But the reprieve was fleeting. Instead of dispersing entirely, the swarm began to reorganize, its remaining components coalescing into a new configuration. This time, however, the behavior was different, more aggressive, almost predatory. "It's adapting," Alaric murmured, his voice filled with dread. Without the core to regulate it, the swarm is operating on pure instinct. And right now, its instincts are telling it to survive, at any cost. Elias clenched his fists, frustration boiling beneath the surface. They had struck a blow, but not a fatal one. The Veil was wounded, yes, but far from defeated. Worse still, the Karvath sensed weakness, pressing their attack with renewed vigor. "We can't keep this up forever," Marcus said bluntly. "Our shields are failing, and we're running low on munitions. If we don't pull back soon, we'll lose the station." Elias knew he was right, yet retreat wasn't an option. Not yet. "Rhea, focus everything we've got left on keeping those ships away from us." Priya, Rally the fighters and buy us as much time as possible. Alaric, figure out how to exploit this new behavior pattern. There has to be a way to turn it against them. Amidst the chaos, Alaric made a startling discovery. By analyzing the swarm's erratic movements, he identified a vulnerability. Without the core to maintain cohesion, the nanobots were susceptible to external stimuli. Specifically, high-frequency vibrations disrupted their ability to communicate, causing temporary paralysis. This could be our edge, he explained, sketching diagrams on a nearby screen. If we flood the area with resonant pulses, we might be able to immobilize the swarm long enough to finish them off. Elias seized upon the idea immediately. Marcus, adapt the station's emitters to generate those frequencies. Rhea, coordinate with Priya to create overlapping fields of coverage. We'll hit them with everything we've got. The plan came together quickly, fueled by desperation and determination. As the Carvath closed in, the outpost unleashed a symphony of sound waves, bathing the surrounding space in pulsating energy. The effect was instantaneous. Nanobots froze mid-flight, their sleek forms twitching uncontrollably as the vibrations overwhelmed their systems. Seizing the opportunity, Priya led a final assault, targeting clusters of paralyzed drones with precision strikes. One by one, the fragments of the veil dissolved into inert particles, drifting harmlessly into the void. Yet even as the tide turned, the Carvath refused to surrender. Their remaining ships launched kamikaze runs, intent on taking the outpost down with them. In a climactic exchange of firepower, the defenders held firm, their resolve unshaken despite overwhelming odds. When the last enemy vessel exploded in a fiery blaze, silence fell over the battlefield. Exhausted but triumphant, the crew of Outpost Eternity allowed themselves a moment of respite, knowing they had faced extinction and emerged victorious. In the aftermath of the battle, the station resembled a war zone. Hull breaches dotted its exterior, exposing corridors to the vacuum of space. Emergency repair crews worked tirelessly to patch the damage, while medical teams tended to the wounded. Morale, however, remained high. Against all odds, they had survived. Not just the Carvath, but the Veil itself. Elias called another meeting to assess the situation and plan next steps. Though the immediate threat had passed, questions lingered about the origins of the Veil and its implications for the future. Was it a weapon created by some ancient civilization? A natural phenomenon gone awry? Or something else entirely? These events raise serious concerns about our understanding of the universe, Alaric remarked. If entities like the Veil exist, then we're not alone. Not in the way we thought. And that changes everything. Elias agreed. For now, our priority is reinforcing the outpost and ensuring it remains operational. But moving forward, we need to rethink our approach to exploration and defense. The galaxy is bigger and stranger than we ever imagined. Over the following weeks, Outpost Eternity underwent extensive repairs and upgrades. Reinforcements finally arrived, bringing fresh supplies and personnel to bolster the depleted ranks. Among them was Admiral Helena Cross, a seasoned veteran dispatched by Central Command to evaluate the situation firsthand. "Impressive work, Commander," she said during her tour of the station. "You've accomplished what many considered impossible." Elias accepted the praise modestly, though he knew credit belonged to the entire crew. Without their courage and ingenuity, none of it would have been possible. Admiral Cross also brought news of broader initiatives aimed at addressing the challenges posed by the Veil. Research teams were being assembled to study the phenomenon further, while diplomatic efforts sought to establish alliances with other species facing similar threats. The Carvath may have been enemies today, Cross noted, but tomorrow, they could become allies, if we play our cards right. Elias nodded thoughtfully. The idea of collaborating with former foes wasn't without merit, especially given the scale of the dangers lurking beyond the stars. As stability returned to Outpost Eternity, Elias reflected on the lessons learned during the crisis. Leadership, he realized, wasn't about having all the answers. It was about trusting your team to rise to the occasion. From Alaric's scientific insights to Rhea's strategic acumen, Each member had contributed uniquely to their success. He also recognized the importance of adaptability. In a universe full of unknowns, rigid adherence to conventional wisdom often led to failure. Only by embracing uncertainty and thinking creatively could humanity hope to thrive. One evening, as he stood gazing out at the stars from the observation deck, Rhea joined him. "Thinking about what's out there?" she asked, nodding toward the horizon. "Always," Elias replied. "But for now, I'm just grateful we made it this far." Rhea smiled faintly. "Me too. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Years later, Outpost Eternity continued to serve as a beacon of resilience and innovation. Its legacy inspired a new era of cooperation and discovery, reminding humanity that even in the darkest moments, unity and perseverance could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. For Elias Drake, the experience defined not only his career, but his worldview. He often returned to the observation deck, marveling at the infinite expanse above him. Each star represented a mystery waiting to be unraveled, a story yet untold. If you've enjoyed this epic tale of survival, sacrifice, and the boundless mysteries of the cosmos, consider subscribing for more thrilling adventures spanning the stars. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey through science fiction's limitless possibilities. Subscribe now and embark on your next great odyssey.